Hello, and welcome to mentorDINO. I'm your host, Caitlin Rossier. I am an architect and founder of mentorDINO. I firmly believe that architecture, engineering, and construction professionals can achieve true success by embracing human skills as their guiding principle. So each week, I interview amazing professionals in and around the AEC industry as a way to share stories, inspiration, and advice for others finding their own unique career path. Thank you to all of our current subscribers, and if you're new, we'd love to have you join our community. So if you like this episode, please do me a favor and hit subscribe, like, or leave a comment below. It really helps others be able to discover this resource and support them on their own career journey. So let's dive in. I really hope you enjoy this conversation. Welcome to the mentorDINO podcast. I would like to welcome David Stumpf, founder and managing principal of David Stumpf Architecture in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Thank you, David, for taking the time to speak with me today.
Well, thank you for having me, Caitlin.
And I always like starting out my podcast with my loaded question. And do you mind introducing yourself to my podcast listeners, letting them know a little bit about your journey so far in your education and career?
Of course. As you already mentioned, my name is David Stumpf. I'm a registered architect, currently registered in New York, Pennsylvania, Texas, North Dakota. And I know they're spread all out, but my story kind of follows that. I started my architecture journey at Kent State. When I transferred there from a branch campus of Penn State, I was studying engineering there, didn't get in their architecture program, but wanted to pursue architecture. So I transferred out to Kent State. I did 3.5 years there because I picked up a minor in construction management. So I got an undergrad and a Bachelor of Arts in Architectural Studies with that construction management minor, which I think is very pertinent to what we do. And then I continued my education at the University of Texas at San Antonio, where I did a MArch-3. So it was 3 years there. All said, it was about 7.5, 8 years. And then I went back to Pittsburgh, where I went to work for Peter Marketai in a small boutique architectural practice that does really high-end and really nice work in Pittsburgh South Side. And I did my intern development program there. So I was there for about 2 years before moving on.
And so how did you end up down in Austin? Like, Penn State and Kent are fairly close to each other, but then Austin's a big pivot.
Oh, San Antonio.
Thank you.
Well, that's actually a really good point, because a lot of people get confused between Austin and thinking, or like any of the other branch. They're not even a real branch. It's just the University of Texas system. And then each major city has a university that they're kind of tied into. So University of Texas being in Austin, the University of Texas at San Antonio being San Antonio. And then there's like one in Arlington, there's one in Houston. So, but they all have architecture programs as well. So I picked San Antonio because I wanted to go west after undergrad. I realized that architecture is very, or it can be very regionally dependent. So what you're learning in Ohio along the Great Lakes is going to be completely different than what you're learning in the, I guess, Southwest. It's not really the desert down there, but it's kind of like border desert. So, or you have like the hill country there. So what I learned in Ohio was, how do we protect against the elements, the snow, the rain, that kind of stuff. And then what I was learning in Texas is how do we protect ourselves from the sun? So two very different schools of thought in architecture. And I'm very lucky to have realized that as young as I was, that if you stay in one place, you're never going to get that broad education. I think I heard once that a stone that's still, what was it? A rolling stone gathers no moss, or something like that. I don't know. So maybe
it's something like that.
Yeah, a stone that stays still gathers no moss. Something along those lines. But it's a lot of professions are like that. You got to bounce around. You got to get a rather large perspective on what it is that you do, and then it kind of helps to open your eyes.
Yeah, and how's the construction management minor play into that master's degree and what you're doing now?
Well, the construction management, like, this is another thing. When I was a kid, I got into architecture because I was watching This Old House. And I distinctly remember being 5 and Bob Vila being the host of the show. And he meets the architect on site. The architect pulls a model out. He's talking about the house. And I was like, that's what I want to do. But I continued watching that show. So I thought a large chunk of it was drawing and then building. And so as I got to college, I kind of wanted to fulfill that, I guess, hole that I was missing in the architecture side. We got all the design. We didn't get much of the construction. And then there's also this understanding that, at least back then, we had a good idea that architects and contractors don't always see eye to eye. And my professors would be like, well, you could go out to site, the contractor's going to cuss you out. And so I didn't want that. And I wanted to be able to bridge that gap. So I picked up that minor, which eventually helped me more so on the, I guess, all the testing and everything that we do for our licensure, because it's the information I learned there directly applies to what we were doing in our testing, whereas the information I'm learning in architecture school didn't really apply to that at all.
Yeah, because I feel a lot of architecture schools just design thought and not really providing fundamental skills that we do day in and day out. And
Yeah.
I don't know if that's like culture shock for people when they leave design studio and go into the real world. And then the people that didn't need as much of the design now function a little bit better. I'm probably not even saying that right, but
No, I think you are. I think the problem is it's too theoretical, and nobody wants to get to the nuts and bolts of how do you put this together. But you know, to become licensed, you have to understand how a building goes together, and you have to understand how you run a business and how you run a project. We're not doing that in schools, albeit there's a few like the Boston Architectural College. I think what is that? Is it University of Alabama? One of the ones, the Rural Studio. I can't remember what school that's at, but those programs are actually teaching you how to put a building together. Kent was close when I was there. They had put out more professional architects in the state of Ohio than any other school. They've since gone far more theoretical. And now I look at their Instagram page and I'm like, what is this? Like, this isn't architecture. This isn't the school I went to. Not that any of the professors really cared for me there either, but
hey, as a fellow Kent grad, I see the same thing. And
okay. I thought I was alone in that. I was like, they think they're sci-arc.
Yeah, that is the literal statement I have made to some of my friends. We went up there for a 10-year reunion, and we were all really shocked in the direction it's taken for the professionals they were putting out being such a good school. Yes, they had design backgrounds, but they also had the technical skills to get their feet wet when they started. They still had a lot of growing to do, but they had a fairly solid foundation. And now it's making me second guess when I interview Kent grads and just try to, I more want to dive deeper as if I would in other theoretical programs. So
yeah, so I'm up in Buffalo right now. We opened our second office, or me, opened my second office. It's a workshare space. It's in a building designed by Skidmore, Owings and Merrill. Down the street, we have a building that was designed by, I'm going to get his name wrong. He was the same guy that designed the World Trade Center, the original World Trade Center. Starts with a Y. Mikio Yamasaki?
yeah.
Or I can't.
I can't remember.
Yeah, I can't remember.
I know it's an odd name. It's not a simple name.
No, at least Japanese. So as an American dude like me, it doesn't. It's not easy to pronounce. Or at least he was like. So anyway, that said, he went to state schools, and he's a prolific architect. He won the AIA gold medal, and you got to think like. Not too many of those people are coming out of SciArc. Not too many people are coming out of like these theoretical places. They're the people that are like rising to the top in our profession at the moment, and always kind of have come from more practical backgrounds in architecture, and then they've been able to develop something special on top of that. Him with skyscrapers, Lake Flato, they just won this year's gold medal, and they're very simple forms of architecture that are grounded in the reality of the land that they're building on. Also, a San Antonio firm. So I don't see what's going on in places like SciArc or even Kent now as like, this is architecture nuts. This is graphic design just with a computer simulator. Yeah, that's kind of my thoughts on it.
You can be a lot better of a designer when you know how the details and what you need can all come together.
Right.
Then you don't have crazy cost questions or how is this actually going to get built. It's fine if you stay in the design lane and that's your specialty, but it's those design professionals that are, I want this intricate detail and this is how this is going to come together, that I'm like, oh, they've really thought this through and they know what they're doing, and it's not just a big form and then they say, here you go, you figure out how to get it to work.
Exactly. So. And I think something else is important in that when you learn how to build something, you also learn how, and you correspond. You make sure you're paying attention to the design aspect too. You don't want to isolate either one of those. And if you're able to understand that, and you're able to understand the history of design, you can meld it with modern design. Because a lot of what we've got going on now, especially residential housing on a single family or small multifamily capacity, it's pretty bad. And it's coming from people who don't know how to, or like the firms are isolating the people who know how to put the building together and the designer. Or it's coming from flippers that are just like, oh, I think I've seen this before, so I'll just put these panels up and it'll be modern. I think as architects, we need to take the lead in showing people how, what good design is. And we don't need to stand out as a star architect to do that, but we can really help shape our communities for the better if we're doing that.
Yeah, definitely. So where did you head off to after your first firm? Because I know you didn't jump directly into opening up your own office.
No. I kind of struggled with a little bit of imposter syndrome for a long time. And I think it came from a multitude of things. I grew up in a blue collar family. So my family owns a moving company. And this year is its 90th year in business. So my great grandfather started that. And when I was 12, I started working with them and eventually like saving all my money to put myself through school. Thanks to my mom. She was very adamant that I get a little allowance, but everything else gets saved to help pay myself my way through school. And going through that process, you would meet a lot of different people, and they would always say, especially in the moving side of things, you'd have road drivers come in and they talk to you and they say, make sure you're going to school, make sure you study hard. You don't want to do this your whole life. And my dad's goal was really like show us what work was and what we don't want to be doing for our whole life. Like he's a business major. He went to college and he took over the family business, but he was still on the trucks every day, making sure that the business would run. So, I think moving into a professional world and like the design world and everything like that, I had a little bit of imposter syndrome. So after I got my initial license, working for Peter, I was there for 2 years. He was very, very adamant on, if you're working for me, you're studying for your exams and you're taking your tests, which I think is really good. There's not a lot of firms out there that really want you to do that, but his number one priority was making sure that he was creating the next generation or fostering the next generation. And so while I was doing that, I was definitely getting the experience I needed, but I never really felt like I was I never really felt like I was the best at any one of these things. So I had that imposter syndrome. And I think it stems from transitioning from like a blue collar mentality to a white collar mentality. But I was laid off from Peter's firm after 2 years, and Pittsburgh at the time, 2016, there wasn't a whole lot of work in the architecture industry at the time. So I was laid off from the firm I was at, and architecture in 2016 in Pittsburgh, there wasn't a whole lot of jobs. So I basically kind of went outside of the realm of architecture, and I went to work for a home builder. It took me a couple months to try and figure out or land the job, but I project managed for a home builder. They had an integrated drafting department, and but I just wanted to make sure that I was getting the construction side of things. First, I needed to pay my student loans. I had $76,000 in student loan debt that I needed to pay off after 7.5 years of college and graduate school, and then not having the ability to pay that back was kind of scary. So I just kind of took whatever job came first. These guys had that opportunity, and it was also a learning experience. Wasn't the best experience at all. It was actually a terrible place to work. A couple of key takeaways having gone in there is learning that I want to work with good people, and I want to do a good job. I don't want to work with people who degrade other people or who actively undermine them or keep them down. Everything we do is a team effort. And so I spent 3 or 4 months there until I got fired after first, when I learned that I want to work with good people, we flew down to Disney World my first week. They wouldn't tell me what flight I was on. They wouldn't tell me where I was going because there was a conference at Disney, and the owner had like this affinity for Disney. But it was a project management conference, like specifically for home builders. Okay. And the construction manager was above the PM, and he wanted me to go to karaoke with him and sing. And I said no. And then he tried to fight me in the parking lot in Orlando PD. I just stood there. I was like, are you kidding me? Yeah.
I will say that's a news story.
Yeah. I was just like, no, I'm not going to go sing. He was very drunk. And I was like, no, I'm not going to go with you. I'm not going to go sing. And that's what I was like. I'm just here for the money and to learn how to put buildings together, and then I'm gone. Then I was that culminated with me being out on a construction site 2 hours away from the office, and the draftsman left a lot of the details off the foundation plans. As an architect, I know how to put a building together. Especially at this point, I also know how to read drawings, so I can say this footer needs to be so far away from this column that we want to put here, but he didn't have dimensions for it. I called the office, no answer. Called him, no answer. I drove 2 hours back. He ignored me. And the next thing I know, I'm asking, and the kid next to him was like, I'll help you. And then he gets up and yells at us, there's a pecking order, and don't you dare talk to my man. And I'm like, this place. If someone brings up pecking order, I find that like incredibly juvenile. That just the term. We're a team. We should be all working together to get stuff done. No one person's better than the other. And I find that disgusting when people act like that. So next thing I know, I get fired because I'm arrogant and I'm out
Can't
there
keep
demanding.
your mouth shut.
Yeah. They literally told me it was arrogant, and then they had some expletives, and I was like, okay, but am I a good project manager? And they were like, yeah. And I'm like, okay, cool. I know I can. That's all.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. So after that, I ended up going to Dallas. I was only at that place for like 3 months, but I built 11 houses in that time frame, and I got you were just thrown and fed to the wolves, and so I got to learn a lot throughout that process, and I felt like I got speed education in construction, and I went to work for WDG in Dallas, and my goal, I still didn't want to start a business because I'd still thought I was lacking something, and this time it was big project experience, and I didn't have that. Working for Peter, we had a lot of small project experience, and then working for the home builder, it was like, okay, nuts and bolts. How do I run a team? How do I run a project? How do I get the subs here? But then I didn't have anything really bigger than small commercial spaces. So, or custom houses, So I went there, and we were working on big 300 unit apartment complexes, or, I think one that stood out was a 20-story tower that's in Turtle Creek in Dallas. So those were experiences that are very special because you're not going to get them everywhere. And I wanted that big project experience. So that's kind of how I bounced around a little bit.
Yeah, because commercial and residential are kind of two different animals.
They very much are.
And
Yeah.
so, like, I more do the commercial side. So when I look at residential, I'm like, I feel like this should be simple, but it's completely different foundations, completely different detailing. And so it can be hard to flip between the two. Um, were there any particular experiences, since you talked about trying to get over imposter syndrome and build that confidence to start your own firm? Were there any particular experiences between the commercial and residential that helped you build that confidence or that aha moment?
I think it just came slowly. So coming out of the home builder, I felt like I had a lot of knowledge, and I didn't really have that imposter syndrome anymore because I was like, I'm around all these people that are putting this together. They're not any more smart than I am. I was a licensed architect, taking orders from a draftsman. Not that that's beneath me or anything like that. But I'm thinking to myself, I know exactly what you're doing. I know how to do your job. I know how to do this guy's job. So that helped like um, quell that sense of imposter syndrome. But going to Dallas, I took a step back in my career and I took an entry level position because I couldn't find anything that I would fit into. I was a licensed architect, 2 years essentially with 2 years of experience. I got um, I think it's 7,500 hours of the IDP. It was IDP back then. It's
Mm-hmm.
AXP now, but I had that 7,500 experience before 2 years hit. And then that 3 months, I was like 2 years of experience as a licensed architect, probably having done more than a lot of people because I went to a small firm with the notion of I'm going to get a full breadth of experience. I'm not just going to be pigeonholed doing bathroom details. I was in client meetings. I was doing billing. I was doing um, proposals, all that kind of stuff. I was on projects from start to finish. Going to the home builder, I was actually building the houses. So heading to Dallas, they brought me on as a staff architect, and kind of just were like, we don't know what to do with you, so we're going to pigeonhole you here. And then I bounced around a little bit throughout. So I
Mm-hmm.
started working with their designers. Then I moved over to the construction documenting, and then eventually, before the pandemic, I was working with them in the CA process. But I might have gotten a little bit of the imposter syndrome there, or maybe even felt a little bit like I was having taken a step back in the career and kind of feeling like I wasn't being utilized to the best of my ability. But um, I knew that I was going to have to do that to then try and leapfrog forward again.
Yeah, because especially through tough economic times, when I
Yeah,
graduated in 2014, there wasn't really any jobs. You're cold calling firms, and the first job to offer me a job is the one I took.
yeah,
And that was my option. And then what, 2018, 19, people are getting like hiring bonuses, like, you're an NBA player. And I'm like, what
right.
is going on?
I when I was I never had an internship in college because nobody would answer the phone for you, even if
Mm-hmm.
you were offering free work. And then the AIA is saying, "Oh, we're going to reprimand you if you take on free interns." Kids need experience. I'm not condoning it, but I was trying to get the free experience if I could have, and nobody would even take me back then. And I cold called and I walked into every firm in the city, and I got told, "Get out of here, kid," by everyone. And even when I got out of grad school, not
Mm-hmm.
a single place in San Antonio took me seriously. Um, and Peter was the only one who honestly was like, "Hey, yeah, I need help. Come on, work for me." Um, and then uh, when I went to Dallas was 2018, so it was right on the like we're coming back out of everything. Projects are going, and then the big Dallas is a boom town, and that firm worked in all the other boom towns, so they had enough space, and they were doing big projects, so they were able to take me on. To be honest, my first salary was 40 grand out of with healthcare, no other benefit. Um, the home builder was 50 grand, no benefits. And then going to Dallas, it was 58,000, but I got nice benefits and healthcare and retirement, 401k, that kind of stuff. So I was uh, good with that. But some of these kids nowadays are getting like real nice salaries coming out of school with no experience. And I just could not imagine that. But
Yeah.
that wasn't our experience.
No, I was in a very similar boat. I can't remember what my starting salary was, but it was in those ranges. But I did get a bigger jump when I did a hot stint at a contractor. That was a 50% pay bump. So that was a
Yeah. Yeah.
like eye
Contractors and
opening.
developers.
I'm like, what?
Yeah. Contractors and developers are the ones who pay the best, which is a shame because that's why a lot of people are leaving our profession. And they're chasing those, or even, UX designers. But it's looking like things are turning around for us slowly, but hopefully for the better. Yeah, I remember I interviewed at a firm in Dallas, and they were like, the one guy. When I went to Dallas, I interviewed at 5 different places, and this is how I knew the place was a boomtown. I got an offer from every single one. I worked with a headhunter, and she was like, "Oh yeah, I got." She lined me up with all these different interviews. I went to all these different firms, which is also nice, and I recommend that for anybody who's doing that. Like, interview with multiple places because then you get to see what their culture is and where you'll like to fit. But the one guy was telling me about the '80s and the boom in the architecture industry then, and like the bonuses they were getting. And I'm like, whoa, just don't rub that in because this is just making me feel jaded. I'm like, there's no money in it right now. And then he's talking about, oh, we get $20,000 bonuses and a car, and I'm like, what? Yeah,
Nope.
different
I'll
world.
take it. Let's get one of
Yeah,
those booms.
yeah. I'm like,
But
wait a second. The '80s must have been nice.
yeah. So then transitioning to your own firm, what was
Yeah.
that? What was that step like deciding to do that? How was that process for you?
So the the whole time, I guess, ever since I was in college, I was like, I want to work for myself. That was the eventual goal. Um, Grew up in a family business, so understanding like what that dynamic is, and I really knew what it meant to be able to work for yourself, and be proud of like putting your name on something. Um, my family's business is like it's named after the family, so Stumpf Moving and Storage, and so I got to ride around in a truck with my name on it all the time, and I learned quickly that um, the work that I do better be good because my name's on it, and I'm backing it up, and that kind of just instilled that in me, and so as I went to Dallas, my goal was 5 years in Dallas, and then I'm going to start my own practice. Thought was go back east. Initially, I was like thinking Charleston because my brother was living in Savannah, and a big fan of preservation and historic architecture. But he ended up moving. Pandemic kind of tossed everybody around, and he ended up taking a job in Phoenix. And I was like, nah, I'm not going to Phoenix. So I stayed in Pittsburgh, and I utilized my severance and the Biden bucks that we were all getting to start my practice, which was really nice. It was kind of like, if you go back to your initial question, like what was the catalyst? It was just, I got thrown into the fire. I did 2 years, a little over 2 years in Dallas. And then basically every firm was laying off all of their staff or a good chunk of their staff. I think we were not the first firm to do that. We were hearing rumors about firms all over town. They let us work from home. And then all of a sudden our developers, especially the ones with their money tied in the market, were like, hey, full stop on these projects. And then they were furloughing half the staff and laying people off. So I was one of the ones that got the axe during that process. And then I was just thrown in. I was like, okay, well, this is 3 years earlier than I wanted, but I get to get started. I didn't have as much imposter syndrome at that point as I did back when 2 years prior. So I felt like, hey, I'll figure it out. And knowing that if I went back home, there's a subset of Pittsburgh that has no architects. The east side of the city might be giving out my juicy goss now or like my trade secrets, but the east side of the city had no architect between Wilkins Township or not even that, like Edgewood
Mm-hmm.
and Greensburg, the next like major city, the county seat for the next county over. There's no architects. And there was a need because you have, I guess, higher profile communities or wealthier communities that are constantly building new homes or custom homes, that kind of stuff, all between the two. The only guy in uh, Greensburg is Lee Callisti, and he only does modern work. So, I mean, he does really good work, but it's only modern. He won't take any other projects. And so that left a gap. And placing myself there, I knew I was going to at least get a couple of projects to get started because I didn't have any contacts. I'd just been out of town for 2 years, and coming back, nobody really knew who I was. So I planted myself there. I had set up a website to try and do like some moonlighting, but it never worked. I just transferred all that information over, and I set up a Google business, and just kind of went the route of people will Google architect near me. I'm going to be the architect that's near them. I'm going to have to take crappy projects that don't pay well to get started, but I'll make a name for myself. And that's kind of what I did for a while. And that's, I mean, nose to the grindstone, feet to the fire. I just got tossed right into it. There's no other explanation. I don't think I would have been hesitant starting if the pandemic hadn't happened, but it would have been get to that 5 year point and then, okay, now let's go.
Yeah, but sometimes we need a mini push.
Mm-hmm.
Like the layoffs that happen at the people who were hesitant to either start their own firm or pivot out of architecture or just do something else. Sometimes it's a layoff to push them because there's nothing holding them back at that point.
Right.
It's, hey, why not? Let's take this opportunity. Opportunities in front of me. Let's go do it.
Yeah. I think I'm not the first graduate from my I don't know. I honestly don't remember who I went to undergrad with. There's one guy actually worked with at Peter's office who I had studio class with, and I graduated with his wife, who is not working in architecture anymore. Um, Other than that, I have no clue about my undergrad. But my grad class was about 30 people. I'd probably say about half of us are still in architecture,
Mm-hmm.
and of that, only one other person has started their own practice. Um, and so it's something kind of to be said. I think I just went into it the whole time with this aggressive attitude of I need to learn what I don't know, and then I'll jump into it, and um, I'll kind of learn as I go, which I have done. Yeah, I don't think I was as scared as that, as like moving to Dallas and uh, going to a city where I don't know anybody and starting with a job that I am like, maybe this is a little over my head, but we'll figure it out. I think I was more worried about that than actually starting my practice.
Yeah. Plus, it's at least you were coming home. So it's like, well, even if other friends have moved away, you got family to hang out with
Right.
as you build your
Yeah.
network.
Yeah. My twin brother, he was still here and I moved in with him. I rented a room from him for a while and I kind of like poured all my money into starting the business. Um, and yeah, I think thankfully I had a little bit of savings, but thankfully the Fed was giving us like printing that money for us. And I know not a lot of people can have that opportunity now, especially like 4 years later, and we're looking at like what did we do that we just spent all that money, but I could have bought a coffee table with it,
Yeah.
but instead I started a business. So uh, I look back on that and I think I made some good decisions.
Yeah. And I know shifting a little bit into your practice itself, I know you've
Mhm.
done residential and some light commercial work.
Yeah.
Has there been one you enjoy most, or do you like kind of dabbling in both?
Yeah. So I think um, I enjoy both, or at least aspects of both. I think the residential is the most fun. It's like in a way the most creative. You get to do a lot of really cool work. You get to work with a lot of really cool couples, people who like have this vision for something and they trust you to be able to bring that out. I think that's like a lot of the driving factor with why I still like residential work. I've had a couple of pitfalls within that, but I think overall it's been the most fun aspect. But then again, on the side of commercial, I've had a lot of like really bad clients, and that comes from that willingness to take the cheap jobs just to get started, to build a name for myself. Um, but I've also had some really amazing clients. Like I worked on a floral shop. It's a 7,600 square foot floral shop, 2 stories, very modern building. And I developed this relationship with the family that owns that business that I would have never had I not been willing to take a project that I felt like was way out of my depth. Um, Going into that, I'd never run a project of that scale. Even it doesn't sound like it's a big building, but it's a big building and it's a big scope. And I was running a team of engineers and contractors myself, and I had never done that. So even though I had like little bits of experience here and there, um,
Mm-hmm.
I think that was the most fulfilling. Honestly, that was probably one of the most fulfilling projects I've had because of the clients and getting to see my vision come to life. And they trusted me fully. It's the only modern building in East McKeesport, Pennsylvania. It was the only building built there in the last 20 years. Prior to that, there was a gas station built. And then prior to that, a car wash. And then you could probably go back to the 60s before another building was built. Um, so it was really interesting getting this, like, and exciting getting to see my myself get to make a mark on this community and help guide what this community is. Um, and you get to share that with everybody. Whereas with a residential project, you don't really get to share that with other people, and you maybe not get to go back to it every once in a while. I've done some pretty big houses where the builder just cuts me off and won't let me go back on site or look at the house, and it's frustrating to deal with that kind of stuff. So yeah, I think there's a lot of lessons learned in all of that, but I still enjoy both. But I've learned really how to pick clients throughout all of that.
Yeah, so what advice would you have for somebody starting out to try to decipher a bad client from a good client? Like, do you have things that you look for?
You know what? I think um, there's little tells, and this is going to sound vague, and I don't want it to sound vague because this is like truly how I do this. But um, when you meet with somebody, would you want to be friends with them? Do they seem like they're a little shifty, or they're gonna try nickel dime you, or do they seem like they're a genuinely good person? Are they receptive to criticism or feedback? Um, are they willing to listen to you as a professional or as an advisor? Like, are they there with sketched out floor plans? Say, I want this. Well, that's not my ideal client. The ideal client might come with a floor plan that's sketched out, and they say, like, been thinking through this in my head, and I kind of like the way this is working, but I trust you and I trust how you do what you do, and I'd like to see what we as a team come up with. I'm also not the egotistical architect. I'd rather just work as a team to come up with something that this person has in their mind as, I guess, the ideal vision. And so, by picking those people, I'm just looking for, is this somebody that I think is genuine? Is this somebody that I think is going to be a good friend? Is this a relationship that can last over 6 months, a year, however long it takes to do this process? So, yeah, it's been more difficult with small business owners. One was a salon owner, and I know when I met her, she was all over the place. And I was like, there's something, I don't know about this one. I had told her a couple of occasions, I don't want to take your project. She's like, oh, you're the only one. She was a tenant of a building I'd worked on, so I got a recommendation that way. The building owner, great client. This girl, she was just all over the place. She was 23, opening a salon, had no clue what she was doing. Had her lawyer look over the contract, and I was like, no. If one thing, if a client has your lawyer look over the contract, and then the lawyer wants to pick it apart, run. That's not a good client, because they're going to do that to
Especially
the
for
entire.
something so small. Like,
Yeah, that one ended up being a nightmare, and I didn't want to take the project, but I kind of got like, I could have used the money, and then also I kind of got cornered into it because I felt obligated to the building owner because he referred me to him.
mm,
So it was, yeah, I put myself in that rock and hard space because I felt obligated. But yeah, if a client has their lawyer look over it and they're starting to tear it apart, just don't take the job. It's too many headaches. It's not worth it. The best clients are the ones who trust you, and trust you to do what you do. And they look at your fee and they say, okay, they're not going to fight you on it because you need to make money just as much as they do. And
mm,
you're a professional and you should be making money commensurate to the job that you're doing. You shouldn't have to live or scrape by or live on pennies to be able to survive and to do the profession that you love. I love architecture, but we need money to survive. And I'm not going to be that old school architect that's just, a starving artist. So that's a little side tangent, but
hey, no, I'm right there with you. Because
yeah,
even established firms that have a lot of people in it, and I hear some of the fees that they give for projects, or they're already accepting a project at a loss before they even start doing anything. And I'm like, what are you doing? Like, you don't know what unknowns you're going to hit or how CA is going to go. Do you have the staff to get the drawings to the point that CA is not going to be a nightmare? And if you're already starting at a loss, then you just put the project manager and the project architect in a tough position because you're going to
right.
just start yelling at them to not work on the project, but you want to do a good job for the client, and stuff comes up, you have to be there. So I think we do that to our own profession. I don't think I'll ever understand why. So,
I, yeah, I don't get it. I think it comes from record keeping. I admittedly do not do a good job with tracking my hours or keeping my records. That's one thing I have to work on. Uh, Eventually, my first hire, or at least, um, I guess, B2B situation would be a bookkeeper,
mm-hmm.
so that I'm accountable to somebody for tracking my hours. I think that's like, I've tried apps, I've tried spreadsheets. It's only ever worked when I was accountable to somebody. When I was working for other people, I'd have that thing dialed in every 15 minutes. They know exactly what I was doing. And now I'm like running around trying to put out fires. I'm like, God, that's the last thing I need to do. Um, so I think when it comes to where our fees are at, some of it's record keeping, but then also we're undercutting each other. We don't necessarily have to be racing to the bottom to um, for the fee structure. I just went on a survey for a house, a potential project, and they were like, okay, well, how much would you charge to design this house? And after kind of like feeling them out, this is in Pittsburgh. It's in Hazelwood, kind of a developing area. For those of you
Mm-hmm.
that don't know, it's an old steel area of the town, but you have all this tech infrastructure going in there. CMU is building a lot of robotics laboratories. Uber's there with their test track. And this guy wants to build $1 million house. And personally, I can keep my fees a little lower. I want them to be higher, but it's also kind of like at some point you have to compete. But I'm not going to compete on price. And that's what I told the guy. He asked me what it would cost for me to design the house. And I said about $20,000. And as a sole proprietor architect, that's pretty good. It's not great. There's honestly, for the amount of work that we do, that fee should be a lot higher than that. But my overhead's pretty low. I'm running programs like Revit LT, not full suite. So even my software is kept to a minimum. But he's like, wow, I had two other quotes at 10. I'm like, okay, cool, take it. because I don't compete on price. Quality, I compete on quality, and I'm not going to design you a box. So if we have to, as a profession, kind of stand up to that, I'm not going to compete with Desmond because Desmond Architects, for those of you guys that don't know, is like one of the biggest firms in Pittsburgh, and they're prolific. Like they do all the multifamily projects, and they don't compete on price either. I can't compete with them because I don't have 4 other people working with me, but and I don't have all the connections that their senior leadership does. But I'm gonna sure deliver like a product that's just as good as them. So that's where I'm competing. I'm not competing at the bottom of the barrel with the guys and gals that don't care and are trying to scrape by. We just need to present ourselves as professionals and say, this is what I'm charging. Don't and don't get it twisted. But yeah, when it comes to CA, I build all of that in on the front end, so I get paid for that, and then I do it pro bono, or at least I present it as if it's pro bono. So if they don't want to take it, I still get. Then I then have fee structure built in for the design process that I can take a little more time with, or I have that, or I've already basically been paid enough to fill in for CA. Because also, a lot of the builders in the city don't. They try not to talk to the architect after they get the drawings, and so by putting that in there, or they'll convince the homeowner they don't need to have CA, which you do, because now you don't have a second set of eyes making sure the project's getting built right. And so I put that in all my contracts. If they take it or if they don't take it, it doesn't matter anymore because it's pro bono and I'm showing up on the construction site no matter what.
Yeah. Because we're a lot better at seeing things when it's still studs, whereas a lot of owners or people who aren't used to construction, they'll catch the errors when the kitchen's fully done. And
Right.
it's
Yeah.
at that point it's too late or too expensive. But hey, if an outlet doesn't look right, or hey, they wanted a particular feature somewhere, you can catch it when it's still the bones because you know how it's coming together.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. It's a level of protection for the client that they don't understand. And, and for us, it's necessary. But like when you get to the point where you're running out of fee and you haven't built that in at some point, then you're in this limbo of like, well, how do we make sure the building's going to get built right? And then we mitigate our liability by making sure somebody's watching to make sure it gets built right. So it's a game that everybody's playing. But there's some people out there that are pushing for architects to really be charging what they're worth and to pay attention to each of the phases so that you can make sure that you're doing this correctly and you're not running out of fee and then running into yourself into a process of hire and fire for every time you get a new project. But
Yeah.
I think the future looks bright for us. I'm
Yeah, as
not as
much
worried.
negative we're talking right now, like I think there are some really good positive things starting to happen to change
Yeah,
it.
yeah. Honestly, I think I really do think that the future looks bright. There's a whole segment of the architecture community like yourself that's out there trying to help raise awareness on certain subjects or trying to help better the profession and the next generation coming up. They're going to do the exact same thing. We're going to build on it. And by the time, uh, well, hopefully, we'll eventually be getting paid as much as, doctors or lawyers for the services that we provide. We just need to make sure that at the same time, our professional organizations like the AIA are also protecting the profession rather than allowing people to come in and undercut us.
Yeah.
And then we'll be able to do that. Yeah.
Teach us business side so we stop undercutting each other.
Yeah. 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 If I can't take a project, I refer it out to the guys and gals I know that do a good job. And I talk them up everywhere I go. I'm like, if it's not me, then these are the people that I would go to. And I think that's one thing that our profession needs is a lot more of us raising each other up. Rising tide lifts all boats.
Yeah, because I've definitely talked to a lot of engineers that do that more than architects. Like
Really?
sometimes the architects just get so defensive because it's
Hmm.
their designs and different egos in play. And I've had conversations with engineers and they're like, why do you guys hate each other so much? I'm like,
Really?
all
I
right, they're in the industry and they're seeing this. So
Yeah, I don't. I was always always felt like an outsider in the Pittsburgh architecture scene because it was just like these are all the old curmudgeons that wouldn't let me let
wouldn't
me in.
hire me.
Yeah, they wouldn't let. I couldn't get my foot in the door. They were keeping me out. So I really just took an approach of I'm my own island over here. I will say Eric Fisher, he reached out when I started and was like, hey, if you ever need somebody to talk to. So I've reached out to him. I've reached out to Peter, like when I've had really tough situations,
Mm-hmm.
and they've been nice to talk to because, they're 30 years ahead of me, or 20 years ahead of me, and their wisdom is invaluable. I can't replace that. But there's also a lot of people who don't have big names and don't want to share anything. Um, and like I got a project from a guy who he screwed. Well, he was stamping drawings because a draftsman was just going around claiming he was an architect, and this other guy was old dude in Pittsburgh was just stamping drawings and running like a plan stamping firm, and as he basically screwed over this woman who was trying to open a seafood restaurant, and she hired me to redo everything. And I called the guy and I was like, "Hey, what's going on with all this?" And it was basically just the don't worry about blah blah blah. Mind your own business. I'm like, you're the problem with our industry.
Yeah.
It's not me. It's not me. I'm an open door. I'm an open book. I'm out here trying to help everybody. Uh, I'd like to see those kind of people or firms go by the wayside.
Yeah. Some people it's okay, let's get you retired. Don't you want to enjoy retirement? Go
Yeah,
relax.
yeah. Get out of here.
Yeah. So I know you're starting your firm in 2020, so now you're
Mhm.
year 4, and I know the
Yeah,
first 3 years of any business is the
tough.
hardest.
It's tough. Yeah.
What advice would you give yourself? Like, has there been any lessons learned you've had over the first 3 years that you wish you knew to start?
Yeah. I think lesson wise, I should have, if I'm going to go back and I'm going to say, hey, David, 32-year-old David, like I'm that young back then, pay attention to your marketing strategies and start running ads a little sooner. Um, and then I'd say make sure you're making time for alternative strategies like social media strategies like YouTube uh, and Instagram and LinkedIn and all that stuff. Um, I was doing that, but I wasn't making it. I don't want to say a priority. I was doing stupid stuff like painting grass in Lumion for you know 6 hours instead of saying, oh, I should film a little video and put it up and find like help start doing the grassroots marketing because I have pretty renderings, but how many people have seen those?
Mm-hmm.
It's I think it was more I got kind of caught with the OCD stuff, the OCD design stuff that really don't even matter in the design process, and I would probably go back and say stop doing that, do something that's actually productive, shoot a video, write a blog post, something like that, start an ad campaign, those kind of things that would get you started rather than you the stuff that doesn't matter. And then I think I think another thing, and I still haven't done this, and it's been weighing on me, is go to these professional organizations like the real estate organization, the NA,
NAIOP,
yeah,
NAIOP. Yeah.
NAIOP.
I always have to.
Join it.
I always have to like see it written out. But
Yeah, I can never remember the acronym, but like join it, go to their meetings, get to know everybody, uh, join the Builders Association, go to their meetings, get to know everybody. You don't necessarily have to take the projects that you're getting from there, but you can start to get to know everybody. You build your reputation, because a lot of that reputation is from word of mouth. It's also from the people you know. So I think, I hyper focused on that, like the designy stuff, trying to build my website, trying to build my brand at the beginning, where I could have also been doing some networking stuff as well. You still need to do a little bit of the brand development, because not having a portfolio, and I wasn't about to use projects that I worked on with other people. I wanted to have my own projects on there. I still needed to build that, but I think I did too much of that instead of the actual networking or the marketing kind of stuff.
Yeah, and your YouTube channel is doing really well.
Yeah, thank you. It's
fun to watch.
I've taken a little hiatus. I need I have too many projects on my plate that I need to get done, and so it's like been about a 6-month hiatus. But I'm gonna jump as soon as I can. Finish this one commercial project I've got right now. I'm gonna jump back into that, because it's everything else on my plate is residential, and those seem to be design wise and construction documenting wise the simplest. The commercial ones take forever on the construction documenting side. All the plans examiners, they want everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, thank you. The YouTube channel, that's I'm going to get back into that. And it's a huge marketing driver. It really is. I've got a couple of clients through that. This commercial project that I just mentioned, he picked me up because he saw social media posts. Then he went to my YouTube channel, and then he listened to every podcast interview I was on. And he's like, I like this guy. And I'm like, well, thank you.
It's finding a friend.
It is. It works. It's like, I don't know you right away, but everything we do, everything you're doing, it puts you out in the world. Somebody finds you and they're like, hey, like, I like the way this person thinks. They're showing like the quality of the work they do, and all that. And they're like, yeah, I'm down. Let's work together. So it's worked. And I think I run a side YouTube channel, and that's actually a small business itself. And so I know through that if you do this stuff, you do the social media stuff, you don't have to take every project in the world that comes to you. You can actually do this social media stuff, build a little bit of a name for yourself, and do something that's real. You don't do superficial stuff, but you actually try to impart some wisdom or have fun, entertain somebody, and then you could supplement your business with that. So that's another thing I would like, focus on that too. Don't get so self-conscious about it. Just do it.
Yeah. My first video I ever put on YouTube, I really want to take it down, but I know it's just a learning experience, because it's as you grow and do different things, you learn along the way, and it's a way to see progress. So.
Hey, I recently, well, this is maybe like a year ago, I made all of my YouTube videos available to the public. So you go back far enough. I was a cheerleader in college at Kent, and you can see me doing backflips. You can see me doing stunts. And I'm like, whatever. I'm not, it's showing a little side of me. And so people are going to be like, oh, he did this. This is pretty cool.
Yeah. Starts a whole nother side conversation.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then guess you gave some advice, but this may pull it back even more to when you graduated. And I was like ending my podcast with, what advice do you have for young professionals just starting their career?
Just starting their career. Okay.
I know we've had a lot of advice throughout our conversation, but.
So just starting your career, if you're in college still, see if you can pick up a minor in construction management. I'm telling you, it's actually game changing. If you're past that point, see if you can volunteer with organizations like Habitat for Humanity. Some cities it's a little harder to do than others. And like even in Dallas, there was an organization, I can't think of the name of it right now, but they would go into the south side of town, and they would help fix up all the houses for the old people. And you're not learning the Habitat, you're going to learn a little better about construction. Some of the other organizations, it just depends on who's leading you. You might just be putting a fence up or something like that. But stuff like that, it gets you involved in the community, but it's also teaching you about construction. Another thing would be, based on my own experience, try to go to a firm that's smaller in size, because you're going to get a larger understanding of the process of architecture, rather than a big firm. It might also be confirmation bias, but I went to a small firm, then to a big firm, and that allowed me to first get the total knowledge, and then get more hyper niche in knowledge. I think that's a good way to go about it. But also, don't stay static. No matter how you approach this, don't stay static. Go to a big firm, then a little firm, or something like that. Go to a heavy design firm, or go to a heavy technical firm. Like, move around a little bit at the beginning of your career. It's not the end of the world. But I wouldn't say stay 6 months and then move to another one. You want to probably get about a year or two in at each of the firms you're at, because that's the only way you're actually going to start to learn. If you're bouncing around a lot, it's going to look bad on your resume, but it's also not going to help you learn anything, because you're also learning firm culture. You're learning as a bunch of other things on top of just how to put a building together or how to design a building.
Yeah.
So
I feel when I see resumes that people hop a lot, I'm like,
yeah.
What did you learn, or what did you learn from your mistakes? Because if you're doing too much hopping, then you make all the mistakes and you leave before learning that they were wrong.
Right. I was right before the pandemic. I was not happy with my position at WDG. I was working under their design partner, who's no longer there. And he was one of those people that you get told about, like the egotistical design architect who like yells at you like your professors did, tears your model up, that kind of stuff. He like literally was doing this. I watched him shoot himself in the foot. We were working with the related companies who own Hudson Yard, or they developed the vessel and the Hudson Yard, and they own Equinox. And so we were working on Equinox Hotel in downtown Austin on South Congress. Very, very cool project. Never got built because of a tree. And if you know Austin, they're very particular about trees. And so he had me stay over the weekend and design all these different schemes about how this hotel can land around the root ball of this tree. And I pinned everything up. I had all these different options. And he comes in and he's like, I could have smashed my head in with a hammer and it would have been better than this. And I'm like, okay. And I just walked out. I walked down 32 flights of stairs and I walked right to McDonald's, and I was like, I need a fry and a Coke or I'm gonna end up the funeral home.
I was going to say, I thought he would come in with his own design and say, scrap everything you did all weekend.
No. This guy was just like, he would tear you apart. And then I was so mad. I walked back up 32 flights. And I walked out. The construction workers were redoing the other side of our office. And when I walked out of the stairwell, I was huffing and puffing. I was in a blue blazer, sweat all the way through it and everything. I'm holding Coke. And this guy is just like, what? But I was not happy with my position at that firm at that point. But I'm also not the guy that's going to tell somebody off. So I was interviewing at other places, and I was interviewing at a firm who their biggest client's D.R. Horton, the largest home builder in the country. Mm-hmm. And the woman who owns it is a West Point grad, structural engineer, not civil, structural engineer. And because she was a West Point grad, and I was talking to my brother about this, who's also a military officer, and they're big on leadership. And I'm also, one of the things that I study a lot is leadership. And I asked her, is failure an option here? Or are you going to get rid of me as soon as I fail? Or are you going to let me stumble and grow and learn from my mistakes? And she said, absolutely. That's the only way I want you to and this was a position now, having been 2 years in at that other firm, she wanted me to come on as partner track and take over their design firm, like the actual architecture department, because they had a civil and structural engineering side, and then they had an architecture department, and the gentleman who was running that was ready to retire. And so they wanted me to come on and take over that. And it was a very interesting interview. And I begrudgingly said no, because I actually wanted to start my own practice. I wanted my name on the door. And so it was very insightful that a good leader wants you to grow, and they're not going to just dump you if you stumble and fall. You're going to make mistakes as you go, even if you're older. Nobody ever knows anything. That's kind of why we call it practice, or the practice of architecture. We're always learning. And that was very insightful, and I think that's a lesson that's kind of stuck with me. And for those of you just getting into your profession or into the career, don't think that it's a bad thing to stumble or fall. Just get back up, dust yourself off, and keep going.
Because that's how you learn everything.
Yeah.
But it was fantastic speaking with you, David. If somebody wants to get a hold of you, or they're local with us in Pittsburgh and want you to help them out on a project, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
Well, you could find me at my website, davidstumpfarchitecture.com, or Instagram at Dave Stumpf. And then LinkedIn, always David Stumpf there too. But just feel free to send out a DM. I actually do respond to all of them that I get. Sometimes it takes me a little longer than I'd like, but just feel free to reach out, chat. I'm always willing to help you out with a problem or help solve anything any questions that you might have.
Yep. And I'll leave links to everything down below in the show notes, so it makes it really easy for everybody to find you. So thank you again so much, David.
Thank you for having me, Caitlin.
I hope you enjoyed our discussion today. Learn some advice to take with you and see how our industry is all tied together to create the world around us. Check out the description below for any links or resources we discussed. If you liked the episode, please do me a favor and hit the subscribe button. Give me a thumbs up and leave a comment below. It really helps others be able to discover this resource and support finding that career path that best works for them. If you know someone that has inspired your own career that you'd like me to interview, let me know in the comments below, or you can reach out to me via my website or LinkedIn. I'd be happy to share their story or your own. Thank you again, and I cannot wait for the next career story I get to share with you next week.